Our guest this morning is Newburyport Mayor Sean Reardon. Let's go on the record. The leader of an oceanside city that is a summer destination, year-round destination, but also facing the challenges of climate change and affordable housing near transit hubs. So how does he handle it all? The mayor's in the chair. Let's go on the record.
From WCVB Channel 5, the inside word from Washington to Beacon Hill. Today's newsmakers are going on the record.
Welcome to OTR, everyone. I'm Ed Harling, Oregon News Center 5's political reporter Charmin Cicchetti. It's great to have you with us. And as you can see at the table with us is Newburyport's Mayor Sean Reardon, a Democrat taking office back in 2022, right?
Yes.
Before that, served on the school committee, teacher at one time as well, fifth-generation resident of Newburyport, holds a degree from Ohio State. I'm sorry, the. You have to put the in front of
Ed,
all the years.
I knew you would know that.
All the years I lived in Indiana, everyone told me it's the Ohio State University, but holds degrees from Ohio State in history. Thank you. Thank you so much. Great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me. This is great. Happy Easter, everybody who's watching today, who you're celebrating. But yeah, no, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Happy Easter, Mayor. Let's start with the MBTA Communities Law.
Sure.
Newburyport is part of the commuter rail system and a must zone for multifamily housing. Earlier this year, the town of Milton, they pushed back on the law, voting no on the requirements and now facing a lawsuit from the Attorney General. What has Newburyport done to meet those requirements?
Sure. So we're going through that process right now. And I think, luckily for Newburyport, we're in a little bit of a different situation than some of the communities because we had already established a 40R smart growth district around our rail station many years ago. So we have a lot of units that have already been put in there, and we have some that are on the way. So for Newburyport, you know, it's more about just tweaking what we already have. But I know there's a lot of communities that have a lot more work to do. And I think that's why communities like Milton are pushing back a little bit.
Well, Milton is challenging the validity of the law itself. Do you think that's legitimate?
Well, like I said, I think this is unique because I think every community is going to be different and they're going to have different circumstances that they have to navigate through as far as these MBTA communities. You know, in Newburyport, you know, we're pretty built out. We're about 85% built out. So we only have so many places.
You're also a very dense city, though,
yes.
which is a main concern of a lot of communities.
Sure.
But you've still managed to do it.
Yes. Well, I think we had to because, you know, I think what we're challenged with right now is more the affordable housing end. So how can we be strategic with the developments that we could have come in and maximize as many affordable housing units as we can?
So you've just used the term that I think is the discussion point. What is affordable housing?
Right.
It's often the number one issue for voters. Why is it so hard to get done? Because what affordable housing in Newburyport isn't affordable housing in Wellesley.
No, it's not even affordable housing in Newburyport, to be honest. I think affordable housing is not affordable housing anymore.
How do we get to affordable housing?
Well, so that's a great question. I think it's about partnering with the right developers that can come in. I think the state really needs to probably do a better job in encouraging and having more tax breaks for people to come in to make affordable housing easier to build. But in Newburyport, you know, like I said, I mentioned that.
Do you think that would make a big difference, especially when it comes to this law?
Well, I think this law gives more flexibility for just trying to create housing, right? So they're not focusing on the affordable housing piece. Whereas in Newburyport, you know, our housing prices keep going up. So when you're talking about 80% AMI is considered affordable housing, you know, the average person, that's not really affordable, right? So how do we have more mixed income housing is what I like to try to, you know, talk about.
Rather than affordable, mixed income.
Not just saying affordable, because I think sometimes what you're going to get is not actually affordable. So, you know, we have an affordable housing trust that we work really closely with. We're working on our housing production plan right now. So we're trying to find ways to maximize what we can control over affordable housing.
Let's move to the obviously that situation is not an immediately solvable one like overnight, and I'm not sure this next topic is either because it's a complicated topic, the migrant crisis.
Sure.
And the shelter crisis is hitting communities all over the state and hitting communities hard. The former Chelsea Soldiers Home has now become a safety net shelter. Your city does not have a shelter law, right?
No.
But the billions of taxpayer dollars needed to deal with the crisis sure to have an impact down the road, you know, like the domino theory. So what are your concerns as a mayor of a city in Massachusetts?
Well, I think this is a topic that comes up quite a bit when the mayor's group, that when we meet on a monthly basis, this is what we're talking about, because it really is having a huge impact on a lot of communities. I said Newburyport, you know, we don't have hotels that can be used for it right now. So we don't have a place for them to go. But if by chance they did, I mean, you know, the effect that would have on schools and infrastructure and things like that, I mean, it's a huge concern. And like you said, you know, we're talking about billions over the next couple of years. So I think the state and the federal government have to really lead the way on this and support cities and towns, because like anything, like MBTA communities, you know, you have to think about the impact this is going to have on how we just do day-to-day business.
What do your eyes tell you? What more could be done?
Well, I mean, I think it's resources, right? I mean, I think, we have people sleeping at Logan Airport right now. So, I mean, we had a situation where, and this wasn't necessarily around the migrant crisis, this was more refugees from Afghanistan that came into Newburyport over the last couple of years. And these are big families. You're talking about 12-member families. So we had like 5 different families come in. They were living at the church for years. And so we've been working on ways to get them more settled into the community or the surrounding community. But it's been difficult. It's taken 2 years to do that. Now you're talking about the migrant crisis. We're already talking about a housing crisis, so now you combine that with that, it's kind of like a perfect storm.
You are, as Ed said at the top of the show, a summertime destination. Do you think that Newburyport businesses would benefit from migrants, and do you think employers would benefit?
In some cases, sure, for workforce and things like that. I mean, I think that's why I think the governor is trying to do everything they can to get these people in the position where they can work as quickly as they can and try to cut through some of that red tape. But a lot of our businesses are struggling for workforce right now, so of course that would help.
I want to ask you about a hot button topic in your area. You were a former teacher. Earlier this year, you led the charge to vote down efforts to build a new Whittier Tech. You called the $500 million price tag way too high, and it was voted down. You've since hired a law firm to look at changing the agreement on essentially how this is paid for and the communities that take part in it. What exactly would you like to see changed?
Yeah, well, it's incredibly difficult, situation. I mean, being a teacher and to speak out against a new school was of course, something I didn't take very lightly. So right now, what we'd like to see change, I mean, it's a pretty old agreement. The Acts of 1967, 1967 created it, and it never really had amended it. Some little amendments, but back then, Newburyport's a much different place than it was then. The surrounding communities are much different. So we have 11 communities that feed into the Whittier School District. We'd like to see it be a little bit more equitable and have a little bit more control.
And you all pay in.
All pay in. So like right now, the way they did it on the size of your school district. So even though Newburyport only has 28 kids that currently attend this vocational school, we would have been the second highest community as far as paying into it. We would have been up about 12% of any kind of new capital costs. So what we'd like to see is just have it based on enrollment. So moving forward, so Haverhill has about 70% of the kids are from Haverhill. But they would only have to be paying 30% of the costs of the new building. So I think what was good about all this is that it brought all these communities together, and we were collaborating in a way that we really hadn't before. And I was a new mayor, so I think moving forward, we formed this task force. And it's not all about Newburyport. It's about all 11 communities coming together and seeing how can we make this agreement even better, and hopefully put Whittier in a place where they can thrive in the future.
But vocational schools are actually gaining in popularity, and, and it's become a viable, acceptable, and embraced option. So a well-trained and educated workforce is essential. Yes. So it would almost be like counteractive not to have a place for them to go when you know that this is maybe in the future. This is something that's certainly on the horizon and growing.
Sure. Well, I think this project in particular really shined a light on vocational education too, in good and bad ways, right? Because I think a lot of times now they're very selective in who they're accepting in a lot of these schools too. So I don't think a lot of times, and this was a big conversation in our mayor's group in previous years, is that I don't think the kids that maybe could benefit most from a vocational education are actually getting the chance to do it because they're being so selective in who they're choosing from this group. I mean, for Newburyport, actually for Whittier, let's just say Whittier in general, about half the kids that apply to Whittier don't even get to go right now. And the new building that they were trying to build wasn't even going to increase enrollment. They were going to stick with the same numbers.
So let's continue the conversation about school. School budgets are always a contentious issue. They're a big item on a mayor's budget. We have recently seen bitter teachers strike in Newton. Despite the fact that they are illegal here in the Commonwealth, we are seeing more of them. As a mayor, should teachers have the option to strike?
No, I don't. I think the way it's set up right now, I think you talk about police, fire, teachers. I mean, we need to be in schools. I mean, I think Newton's feeling that this year they're going to be going to school, through the end of June because
they missed a vacation week.
And they missed a vacation week. They had 11 days off. I mean, we just had a big discussion about this the other day. So no, I don't think they should strike. But I mean, they're absolutely in their right to bargain. Right. For a fair contract. I think what's happening now is with a lot of school districts, it's about sustainability a lot of times because you've got rising special education costs, transportation costs keep going up. I think a common theme in some of these the most recent teacher strikes is your instructional assistants. They're asking for more money to be paid fairly. So all these things happening at once, and then you also have Chapter 70 that's not going up either from your aid from the state. So on a year where we're hearing from our state, from Beacon Hill that revenues are down and you're not going to get as much aid as
Right.
usual.
Right.
That puts schools and cities and towns in a tough position. It's like, how do we make up for this? Because those costs, a lot of those costs are fixed, and there's not much we can do to bring that down.
And
So-
we were just talking about the migrant crisis. That's going to put $1 billion
$1 billion
strain
strain,
on,
sure.
on a budget.